I often repeat, and I feel like I'm one of the few, I mean, you obviously, but of these indie media people that regularly repeats that the U.S. is the largest prison state in the world.
So this is a report by prisonradio.org. And it's actually from late October, and it's about an incident that happened in September, on September 15th, in Virginia's Red Onion State Prison. A man named Econ and his cellmate Trayvon Brown set themselves on fire, hoping to escape the intolerable racism, abuse, and inhumane conditions they were subjected to. Econ suffered third-degree burns, and his cellmate's injuries were even worse. These are not isolated acts. In a span of just 2 weeks, a dozen black men at Red Onion took the same desperate measures, setting themselves ablaze. What?
And it then says that these are not an active protest. I mean, I feel like it's kind of both, but they're mainly human beings driven to extreme lengths to basically free themselves from their torment.
Kevin Rashid Johnson, who's an activist incarcerated at Red Onion, has reported on these incidents, exposing the extreme cruelty and hopelessness that defines life inside this particular prison. And yet, of course, as we know, this is not just about this one prison. I mean, this is actually my first time hearing about this specific prison.
And this is a super max in the tiny ass corner of Virginia, Wise, Virginia.
This is like, we've heard of like Rikers is infamous, and the like Angola and stuff like that down in Louisiana. So there's like several prisons that you hear a lot about, but imagine how indicative that is of all the stories that you don't hear. And I actually interviewed a prisoner journalist who talks about all the stories that he brings to light and the extreme abuse, physical, mental, and emotional, that he suffers for bringing these to light. And there's this really incredible moment where he's recounting this to me, where he was brought to the warden's office and said, like, do you see the wall there, Jeremy Busby? And Jeremy's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, what is that wall for? And Jeremy says, well, warden, it's to keep us in. And he said, no, it's to keep the world out. And basically he was saying, like, you're exposing the world to what goes on in here, and that's unacceptable. And so he was basically threatening him, and they've tried to silence him, in basically including trying to kill him for releasing these stories. So the amount of information that we don't know about what's going on in these prisons is legion. I mean, we have no idea the extent. Yeah. And the only reason that we're hearing about this, because guess what? CNN has yet to pick up on this. It's been like 2 months. The only reason we're hearing about this is because there is a prisoner journalist, this Kevin Rashid Johnson, who is willing to risk his life in giving us that information.
His life and his comfort. I mean, when they're not trying to kill him, they're putting him in solitary confinement. They're taking away all the privileges he had, which of course can often be the only thing that keeps you going in prison, where it's like you can't call your family anymore, those type of things.
Yeah. And some of the things that Jeremy Busby talked about in my interview with him, which you can check out at projectcensored.org, was that you're required by law to allow people to meet with their legal team, unless, of course, there's always some unless they've, they're under like some kind of, psychological evaluation, or, they had to be moved for safety reasons or something. So there's some loopholes that you can work with to ensure that somebody doesn't even get to meet with their lawyers. And they've done this to Jeremy consistently. So this is just what somebody has to experience just for trying to tell the truth about what's going on in prisons. So it's really horrifying to even think about this and then realize that this is but a microcosm of what's happening in these prisons. And who's going to be held accountable for this? It's not like there's going to be somebody that then, well, obviously this is horrific. We have to make sure that this abuse doesn't nobody's going to do that.
Yeah. And Ben in the comment section makes a good point. He says if this was in Russia or Iran, it would be a huge story. And to think of that in a much larger sense, everything about U.S. prisons is basically ignored while we point the finger at, Russia or Iran or China and say, oh, you're imprisoning people, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, the United States is the largest prison state in the world, the largest the world has ever seen. Both the sheer number, 2.3 million people in prison every single day. But then on top of that, the per capita number is also higher than anywhere else in the world. China, the per capita number is less than a third what the United States is. Like, the hypocrisy is amazing for us to say we're this free country, right? We represent the free world, all of this free garbage. And meanwhile, we are locking up more human beings. And one of the longer bits, obviously it's comedy, but I always mix those things with facts and truth and stuff. One of the longer bits I'm going to do in the Zoom comedy special coming up in December is about how many people are locked up in these prisons that we could free, we could replace with rehab programs, we could replace with other types of things. And it's utterly insane to have all these people locked up, but it's designed to protect the fascist state, protect the status quo, protect the property of the rich, protect this status quo inequality, gut-wrenching inequality that we have in this country. And so that's why largely all these people are locked up. And, it obviously is perfectly intertwined with our fascist police forces and making sure that mostly the poor, but obviously there's a racial aspect as well, but the poor and the non-white are in the system, are locked up, are at least at times locked up. 1 out of every 3 black men in this country at some point will be put into prison. This is not because they're uniquely violent or uniquely crime committers. It is because the system is meant to do that.
A lot of these states have contracts with these private prison companies that demand a certain amount of beds be filled. Otherwise, the state owes them money.
Yeah, Cosmo Ray brought up that point in the chat as well.
So it's like the states it's kind of like with cops and their arrest quotas, like if you give people the demand that people need to be incarcerated or need to be arrested and put in the system, guess what? You're prioritizing those numbers over any kind of semblance of public safety or public health. So, I mean, it's all bullshit. And they, of course, know that. But what they peddle us is like, we have to keep our streets safe. And it's like, yeah, well, then get your RoboCops out of my face.
The other thing I wanted to say is we have another live Zoom comedy event. Eleanor Goldfield will be opening, as well as John F. O'Donnell, Naomi Caravani, 2 of the correspondents from Redacted tonight. And I will be doing a new hour as well. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. And it's $5 goddamn bucks. It's $5.
And you don't have to wear pants.
But yes, it'll be Zoom. It'll be straight to camera, and you can watch it anywhere in the world. And it's December 11th and 14th. And the tickets are at leecamp.simpletix.com. When you get there, you'll see this page, and you can click on which date you want. leecamp.simpletix.com. I always say there's no reason not to grab a ticket because it's $5. Either you come and you have a great time, or you don't come and you support this show, or you come and you hate it, at which time I will refund your money, I've said, although no one's ever asked, but I will refund your money. So you have nothing to lose. Grab a $5 ticket. leecamp.simpletix.com.